But really, I like to look at things from a much bigger macro perspective and try to put the puzzle together in that way. Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is the Blockchain Backer bringing you the latest cryptocurrency news and analysis. And today is Friday, so today I'm going to have a news video for you guys, just like we did on Monday. So we're going to kind of recap what happened throughout the week this week. Now, like I did mention, I do have a live stream that will be out in just a few hours, so I'll keep you guys updated on Twitter about that. But let's just dive straight on into the news. Now, I know a lot of times in cryptocurrency, we want to talk about like partnerships and we want to talk about, kind of speculative things and what people have said, like what has Brad Garlinghouse said on television or, what is Tone Vase saying about Bitcoin and all that kind of stuff. And yeah, that's all kind of micro stuff. But really, I like to look at things from a much bigger macro perspective and try to put the puzzle together in that way. Now, before I dive into this, like on Monday, I told you, hey, let's keep it light, tight, and bright. We talked about some pretty basic news, nothing too deep. But this one, it's a little bit deeper and it's a little bit more complicated of the news because I've tried to kind of go back into the past and put a timeline together. And before I start, I want to make sure that I address this because it's going to make a lot of people question and wonder, and you need to know the answer. And that is, what is my political affiliation? And my political affiliation is independent. Okay. So not Democrat, not Republican. My personal opinion is that they both work together, and it's just an illusion that they work together in unison to keep everybody in control with fear, infighting, fighting amongst ourselves, and all that stuff. So I personally am independent and I don't buy any of it. So when you hear me talk about all of it, it's not because I'm choosing one side or the other. I don't like either. So, all right, so here's the deal. When we talk about cryptocurrencies and leveling the playing field, we're talking about some type of event has to occur in order for these cryptos to become completely mainstream and to take over typical finance, or at least to play a very huge role in finance. We always talk about this leveling the playing field and, what is going to happen. I always think to myself, well, what would that actually look like if it really did occur? What type of events in the world would need to unfold? And it's really wild because, as I mentioned, I don't watch the news on television. I don't like to go to any of the mainstream news websites. In my opinion, I think all of them are an extension of the government, an arm to keep the story going, to lead the people in the right direction. I keep that in mind when I look at news, and I talk about it several times that if you look at the news and you look at the price charts of the stock market, you can notice that things occur exactly when they're supposed to occur. It is the scariest thing in the world. The last 4 months have been extremely interesting in regards to markets, right? So when we think about like liquidity problems and having to bring in a new currency, well, you would have to think it's because the current system is not working anymore. And right now, the biggest news is not about partnerships with Ripple or about what's going on with Bitcoin or how fast payments are. None of that stuff matters. That's all just kind of micro stuff. The biggest thing, in my opinion, going on right now is what's happening on the global stage, the big theatrical show that's being put on between the United States and Iran. So, as you guys know, a week ago, we had a big drama start between Iran and the United States, and it's been a very theatrical, almost daily theatrical performance that goes on every single day. Something new, something big, something to keep everybody talking. And I want to take a step back and I want to play out what it was like for the last 4 months in regards to news cycles and how they've kept us all infighting and how they've also served as a monstrous distraction. So here we go. This week, U.S. strike in Iraq kills Qasem Soleimani. Now you're going to probably say, wow, you completely slaughtered that, and I'm sorry, but it's just because I don't watch any of the news. I have no idea how you're really supposed to pronounce it, but hopefully that was close enough. So that's the really big news of the week, but that was just the start of what occurred, right? That was back on January 2nd, and now we're on January 10th. But now we're going to take a step back and we're going to look at 2019. And for the stock market in the United States, what was the story that was being told every single day throughout the whole entire year to explain away any type of movement in price up or any type of movement in price down. And it was one thing and one thing only. Markets rise on US-China trade optimism. Markets expected to open higher on optimism over US-China. Investors buying on trade optimism are totally misreading the situation. Stocks hit record highs on trade optimism. Stocks close higher. Trade optimism, trade optimism, trade optimism. And then, of course, you have the opposite, concerned over trade, trade pessimism, all the things every single day is what the news cycle was in order to explain away the stock market. But then on September 16th of 2019, so less than 4 months ago, the Fed seems to have halted a potential crisis in the overnight lending market for now. The Fed protects gamblers at the expense of the economy. What's wrong with the repo market? The Fed is flooding money markets with cash. The Fed seems to have halted the potential crisis in the overnight lending market. Fed focuses on repo market exit strategy after avoiding year-end crunch. Fed loses control of its own interest rate as it cuts rates. This just doesn't look good. So on September 16th, there was a sudden concern about the repo market and the overnight lending, and then the Fed had to dish out around $50 billion. And since then, it's been going on every single day. So here we go. This is the start of our timeline. September 16th, sudden crisis starts. All right, so this is the start of our timeline. September 16th. Suddenly, the Fed injects like $50 billion into repo, okay, out of nowhere. September 16th. Then they do it again. And then September 18th, 2 days later, Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, goes out and speaks in front of the country and says everything is completely fine. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell, in addressing the run-up in short-term funding rates, said the Fed had been expecting extra demand because of Treasury settlements and a need for cash by corporations who were paying taxes. But he said it was surprised by the volatile market. So there's your lie. We know it's a lie now because we've seen how much money they're still injecting into the system and that we've started quantitative easing for. So here we are 2 days later, we get this straight up lie saying that, oh, it has to do with these taxes that they have to pay is why we had to give all this money. But it never stopped and it kept going. Now, if you watched anything on Twitter or over the internet about any type of economists, it became like a wildfire how fast this was spreading about what was going wrong. Every conspiracy theorist out there was picking it up and talking about it, and it was just all over Twitter. So what do we get just a few days later? Mind you, I've still never watched this video because something about it didn't smell right with the timing of it being released. So September 16th, repos start. September 18th, oh, it shouldn't be anything to worry about. You shouldn't be surprised. They just had to pay some taxes, and we're just helping with that whole thing. 5 days later, after the wildfires burning like crazy on the internet, we get Greta Thunberg to take over the internet by storm and to get everybody distracted. As you can see in this video, 12,000 up, 27,000 thumbs down. Now, I've never watched this video. I have no clue what it says, but I do know this girl is very angry. And so what do we have? Hey, everybody, look at this girl. Yell at this girl, be mad at this girl, keep your focus on this little girl. This is the temporary Band-Aid distraction, because what happens the very next day? So let's get the timeline back. September 16th, repos start. September 18th, Federal Chair Jerome Powell says, hey, move along, nothing to see here. 5 days later, we get the internet taken over by storm with Greta Thunberg. And then the very next day, Pelosi announces a formal impeachment inquiry accusing Trump of a betrayal of his oath of office, a betrayal of national security, and betrayal of integrity of our elections. This is all within an 8-day period. Repo start, Fed denies that it's anything serious to look at. Here, look at this shiny thing we'll wave in front of your face, this little girl who's really angry on the internet, and then boom, impeachment inquiry. Now you ask me, well, why aren't you politically affiliated with either side? Because you see things like this happen where it seems so coordinated. You see the timing of how they both seem to do these things together, where it's just way too coordinated that it just kind of, it doesn't smell right to me. So within a matter of 8 days, we have all of these events occur. What's going to make bigger headlines? The fact that there's repo and bailouts going on in the markets and the overnight lending markets for banks, or Trump impeachment? Which one do you think gets the most clicks? Which one do you think keeps attention spans longer? Which one do you think everybody cares about, right? Very easy. Cover the headlines up, smash it with this big news story, and that's what you get. December 18th, Trump gets impeached. But now we have to go back and we have to remember when we were talking about the whole China trade thing, how it took over the whole year as being the explanation every single day for every piece of price action. If the price fell by just a fraction, it was pessimism about trade. If it rose, it was optimism about trade every single time. However, there were deadlines that were set for this, trade deal plan A part 1-42, whatever they are. I know they're broken down into different plans or different parts or something like that. So it was broken down into two different parts, right? You had the October 15th deadline and you had the December 15th deadline. And what happens with both of those? Well, 2 days before the October trade tariffs are supposed to go into effect, boom, they don't do them. 2 days before the December 15th tariffs are set to go into effect, boom, they don't do them. Now, if you know anything about tariffs, especially importing tariffs, is that those are paid by the country that is importing. They are not paid by the exporting country. So any tariffs that were being imposed on Chinese goods were not being paid for by China. They were being paid for by the end consumer. It's just another cost that a company has to incur in order to create a product, and you work that cost into your products and you pass it on to the consumer. That's not political. That's just straight up fact. And look, international supply chain businessman, I'm telling you from personal experience, the cost gets given to the consumer and China doesn't pay a penny. The United States pays 100% of it, and citizens are the ones who pay it all. So the story and the narrative were very odd that China would ever even have to comply with anything because they weren't paying any of the taxes. Citizens of the United States were paying 100% of them. However, there was the narrative going around in the media that citizens weren't paying it. But I promise you, citizens pay 100%. But the narrative is this whole trade optimism and how important it is and that the relations with China are good. None of it ever made any sense to me ever throughout the whole year because it was like, this is nothing more than a tax on the citizens. You reduce their federal income tax so they don't have to pay as much on their paychecks, but you increase the taxes on their consumables. It was just a way to balance it out. So, like magic, neither of these tariffs go into effect on October 15th or on December 15th. Great. So what do we all get? December 18th, Trump gets impeached by the House. Oh, whoop-de-doo, another theatrical moment that we all got to experience because when this goes to the Senate, the Republicans are not going to impeach Trump. We all know this. It was just a theatrical performance. Why did we go through this whole theatrical performance when there's going to be no end result? So, all right, the impeachment happens on December 18th. Now, we all get to go enjoy Christmas, right? It's Christmas break. The kids are going to get out of school for 2 weeks, and we don't have anything going on. At this point, the China stuff is all wrapped up, right? The tariffs deadlines passed, the plans are signed, the deal part 1-43AB is signed, and we're all happy. So we go and we enjoy time with our family. We enjoy Christmas, we have a happy new year, and then we start the new year. And right now, at the start of the new year, we don't have any infighting to do. There is no Russia probe. There is no impeachment probe. There is no trade problems. Everything is okay. There is no fighting amongst anybody. However, the repo market and quantitative easing are flying. The stock market is breaking into new highs, and it's shown that every dollar being pumped into the markets by the Federal Reserve is rising the stock market to record bubble-setting highs. And on January 2nd on Forbes, the Fed has quietly started quantitative easing 4. In September of this year, something still unexplained happened in the repo short-term financing market. Liquidity dried up and interest rates spiked, and the Fed stepped in to save the day. So here we are. There's nothing to talk about, and there's nothing to fight about amongst the citizens. We don't have impeachment to talk about, Russia to talk about, trade to talk about, nothing. Greta Thunberg, Time Person of the Year. So what are we going to do? Are we going to go into 2020 and actually talk about QE4 and the repo madness? No, absolutely not. The citizens cannot live together without infighting. There has to be some kind of infighting. So January 2nd, we get this, U.S. strike in Iraq kills Qasem Soleimani. Days later, Iran apparently retaliates and fires missiles at U.S. bases in Iraq. Now, this is when things started getting really like, oh man, I don't know if I buy any of this, but if some of you saw it on Twitter a few nights ago, there was this release of this video showing dozens of rockets being shot off simultaneously in this beautiful formation in the middle of the night with big golden streaks coming off and looking absolutely theatrical. And I said to myself, well, this video has to be taken by them and being published on Twitter. Why would you do that? Why would you create such a theatrical looking thing and then post it? Then at the same time, Donald Trump is on Twitter saying, hey, everything is fine. This is all gravy. Nothing to worry about here, guys. And then, of course, he comes on television, very serious, very, hey, blah, blah, blah. We stand against Iran. A 737 jetliner is apparently shot down. And who gets to blame? Who does the United States say shot down this jetliner? Iran. Well, isn't that a little bit of a coincidence that Iran would be the one to shoot down a bunch of passengers? Then the House passes a war powers resolution, an effort to restrict Trump's actions against Iran. So here we go. We're 1 week into 2020 and we're back to the infighting. This crazy narrative of this guy who gets killed by the United States on the other side of the world, and then Iran firing rockets, and then the United States saying, oh man, and you shot down these planes, and you guys are bad guys, and we're the good guys, and then we have the Democrats picking one side, and we have the Republicans picking the other side, and boom, we're back to infighting. We all have something to fight over again, right? Is that ironic? Because the underlying problem is still that the economy is in massive trouble. The repo bailouts are continuing. The Fed is increasing its balance sheet, quantitative easing, and no one is talking about it. And that's why I think this ties into cryptocurrency, and it ties back to the news for crypto, because yes, partnerships are great. All that stuff is great. Payment speed's great. But the reality is, if we're going to have this really big change, what is it that's going to do it? Do I think that this event is what's going to do it? I don't. I don't think this event has anything to do with it. I think this serves as nothing more as infighting amongst the citizens and to create a large story to cover the headlines so they can continue doing what they're doing like they have for the last 4 months and keep everybody talking about other things. It has been nonstop for 4 months. So I think something big is coming, and it all leads back to what's going on with the quantitative easing and with the repo markets. And there's a financial problem of liquidity that is occurring. All of these news stories need to cover up. So that's going to wrap it up for all of that, guys. Holy cow. Was that light, tight, and bright? I don't think so. But anywho, like I mentioned, I've got a live stream going on in a few hours from now, and I'll get that announced over on my Twitter page. We're not going to talk about any of this stuff in that live stream. It's going to be more about just looking at charts and hanging out with you guys and chatting, and I'm really excited about it. So thank you guys so much for watching. Please like this video and subscribe to my channel. As always, this is not investment advice, and I am not a financial advisor. But if you ever need a pick-me-up or a little bit of reassurance, just remember that the blockchain backers got your back. Have a good one.